Hiya! This is Kitten Features, and you're listening to ShowX Live with Ken in his student accommodation all the way in Scotland, and Wade in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Hello! You alright, Ken?
I don't know what just happened. My throat just closed up on itself. I don't know why. It's like, show's starting. You haven't coughed in 2 days. Now's the time.
Right. Just the time is for me to open it up for everyone to see. Anyhow.
What was that?
Hey, hello everybody. It's 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, Easter Sunday. Welcome to the show. It's the 21st of April 2019 today. And happy Zombie Jesus Day. As you know, he has risen. Please now cast your healing spells to smite him back down.
He has been placed in the oven for approximately 200 degrees Celsius for 15 to 20 minutes, and he has now risen.
Ha! Actually, wouldn't that have been more of a he's been set down with enough yeast in him, a blanket covering him, and naturally thus has risen over time?
Yeasty Jesus.
Oh, that sounds bad in so many ways.
Usually that's considered an infection, but whatever.
Oh God, a Jesus type yeast infection, meaning a yeast infection so much it's a holy experience. Anyhow, hey everybody, welcome to the show. How you doing today, Ken?
I'm okay. I'm a little annoyed because my headphones died on me today. So I'm using my backup headphones that I managed to salvage. But these are horrible. I'm continually putting them back in my ear. They keep falling out.
That is no fun. I have found that there are very few headphones actually that fit me in a way that are comfortable. Especially
not
in
only
ear.
that, but yeah, in-ear ones are the worst because I find these little wow, how much of a weird shape is this thing? Look at that. Isn't that weird? Isn't that just a weird shape?
That's like a combination of odd ones. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where we got this from. But yeah, this little plasticky removable bit, they're supposed to be removable so you can change the ear size, the eardrum size thing, right? Ear canal size part. And the problem for me is this: I keep my headphones in my back pocket, and I'm continually pulling them in and out multiple times during the day. And at some point I'll pull them out, look at them, and be like, "Oh, the plasticky knob thing has disappeared," and then I'll spend 5 minutes crawling around the ground trying to find it. And usually I do, but that early on this week I actually lost my the plasticky knob bit on my favorite headphones. So I went to my second favorite. They broke. And now I don't have any headphones. I'm on these.
Oh, that's terrible.
Things.
That's you need to have
and they don't have beard space. I can't. I need to squeeze through it with my beard.
As I say, I don't use wired ones as much anymore. I have to admit I have some really inexpensive but decent Bluetooth ones that I like that are in ear, but they have the little notch thing that actually rides in the edge of the ear, and put those in. Nice. And it's what's nice about them is I can run with them. And then you put the thing behind the neck, the cord. The challenge with it is, and I need to either get a clip or something to tighten it more against my back of my head, because it swings around just enough that it keeps pulling itself one direction and trying to pull the main one out of my ear. So I feel it on my neck, and it's I need to put a little band around it so I can tighten it around this back so it doesn't shift. But beyond that, it's actually great and a good lot of fun.
I am looking forward to implanted earphones. This needs to be now. I remember looking at this 6 years ago and being like, oh my god, this is the future. This should be here in a couple of years, and it's still not here yet. Basically, this random guy online did, biohackers, these kind of people are called, where basically he implanted his ears with bronze wiring and a little magnet that resonates.
Okay, I was gonna say when I'd want something that doesn't need to be upgraded.
So what he did was he'd have this connection here in his ears, and then it needs, I think the way it works is that within 1 foot it needs some copper wire connecting to a line in. So he wore a necklace that was made mostly of copper or had some copper wire in it. That would go down, connect into his MP3 player or iPhone or whatever, then play music. And what I would do is the signal would go from around his neck piece into his actual implanted internally bronze wiring in his ear, which would go to the magnet, which would vibrate the magnet based on these signals, and he would hear music. But the great thing is, it was inside the skin of his ear, so he could still have conversations with people, and it would never look like he was listening to music or anything. And I was like, this is like, it's water. Well, apart from maybe the necklace, but otherwise it's waterproof. And you can't lose your headphones. And if you get really good quality ones, then you would never need to replace them. Like, this is just something we all have.
That would be
interesting.
Now
imagine this was like we already do stuff with our ears. We pierce them with metal because it looks pretty. Now imagine we actually did something that's actually functional. And,
well, in a way, something that's like that is the colloquial implants they do for people that have injuries or something wrong with their hearing.
Oh, cochlear implants, yeah.
And so there's ways I can see doing it even with some of that technology. I've heard bits more and more about how that's done, and it's pretty interesting. So that would be an interesting hack. I do admit there are parts of me that I would like to get bionic. I think this is a discussion that was, I don't know if we've had as much before. I know we've mentioned it.
I think we've had it, yeah.
Yeah, where I admit that I would want to give up choice pieces initially. Like, in the meaning that I don't want to go full robot. I would like to give off like my offhand or something. Like if I was going to change out for a bionic limb or something, I would start with like my left arm or hand or something like that, which is still a challenge because there's so much feeling in it that's tough.
Well, that's the thing, though. They've gone to a point where they can actually now bionics can feel now.
They actually
have a feedback mechanism.
They can, but it's a level of precision, right? And that's where my concern. Because one of the first things I'd love to give up is like my left eye, just because.
Do you have a bad left eye?
Well, both my eyes are shite overall, but. It's something where, I had laser shot in them, and it's been almost 20 years, and it's getting to a point where I survive without glasses right now, but I could benefit from them, or / an update to the eye, and when I did it, I was told I had 3 times that I could do it before I had not enough material left, so I've been holding off as long as possible. But if I could give up one eye and have it tie directly in so that I could actually put various types of cameras and sensors in it, so I could see beyond the human spectrum and kind of split between, that you could have built-in telephoto, that you could have built-in ability to perhaps record, things like that.
Yeah,
and so that,
cool.
I mean, you think from the perspective of a photographer, or just how we see the world, right? How interesting it would be to be able to always have that available, right?
It's a dash cam in your eye.
Right? So you'd have a built-in heads-up display on everything you do. So AR would just be your life. And the information you could provide, so if you have it Bluetoothed into your phone or something like that, right? You could have some of those software types of things running, or a more powerful device, but I figure your phone's so close to it now anyways. But where you could do like
pure VR.
Well, so you could have full VR, right?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Like the purest form of VR ever.
Yeah, truly stereo, full refresh, stuff like that. But also the ability to just overlay everything over what you're already seeing, and have things like what people have talked about the goals of Google Glass was, and stuff like that, of being able to have facial recognition. So as soon as somebody starts walking towards you, it can remind you that person's name, contact information, stuff like that. Or maybe, whatever things. Yeah, how powerful that would be.
That would be, but I was thinking military use. Imagine you're storming a building or something, there's like 6 of you. You can each see what you see, and I don't know, your next squad member can see as well.
Yeah, it's taking what they already do in the military, right? They already have that, because they already have like little heads-up displays, and they have shared camera views. But to make it part of your everyday, and I would say probably one of the best examples of how technology like this could be utilized, and I know this is going to be a reference, Ken, you're going to be like, meh, but the anime Ghost in the Shell, and not just the movie, because the movie's the start point is interesting. And actually, Ken, if you ever do watch Ghost in the Shell, the movie, the original one, is more political than it is anything else. It's kind of crazy because it's really talking about what it would mean, what does life mean, especially as you get more and more cybernetic, is more the discussion that happens, and it's very interesting. But the series continues on where they have some great examples where different characters in Ghost in the Shell have different levels of augmentation or cyberized bodies, right? Where you have the Major, who is basically 100% cybernetic, and then you have various team members that have chosen to have parts done, and one team member at least has nothing. No augmentation, no mods at all. And so it's interesting because they do explore in the series some of those aspects of what it would mean and some of the weaknesses of them, because some of the villains, one of the better villains they have in the series is when they do the Laughing Man series piece, where as a villain, because he's such an amazing hacker that he actually can hack people's bionics. And
right, okay.
it talks about one of the risks, right? And one of the main characters they have is Bato, who is kind of a muscle in it. You know, he's augmented to be stronger, and he has had both his eyes replaced. And so when you see the character, they're both like full kind of...
it's also like a
crystallized thing.
Deus Ex Machina, right?
In a lot of ways,
Deus
like
Ex.
when you look at those. But it shows like one of the things that the Laughing Man does at one point is actually hacks Bato's eyes and makes it so he sees everything else in the world except for the Laughing Man. And in such a way, so from essentially Laughing Man's so good, and spoiler to anyone who hadn't seen it, it goes out and shows essentially how he's able to hack himself out of the world. And
That's
so
pretty cool.
all the cameras and anyone that has vision and stuff just do not see him.
So he's invisible, effectively. That's pretty cool.
From anything electronic. And so then the people that still have regular vision can get over. So that's also part of my thing is I'd only want to give up one eye, essentially. So as to still have... And that's part of my overall with bionics. Other than certain things like my knees, I would absolutely replace both of my knees for mechanical joints, which we kind of can to a degree, but in a much more, not because I have to not suffer, but in an augmentation way where it's stronger, lighter, faster, those kind of things to my knees.
I'd be tempted to go further. Like, why not have wheels? Why not have rockets?
Admittedly, and that's actually why I hope people have gone out and seen Battle Angel Alita.
I haven't yet, no.
Because it is an amazing film, and it shows a world where augmentation, it's another one where a lot of people are augmented, some almost completely, and you do see some of that difference of what if there are no limits? What do you have, what if you don't want to or need to maintain humanity in some form? And so you have some that are almost fully robotic in many ways, and they are not humanoid and such. And so it's a really interesting concept. And Tabaxian asks one of the, great questions whenever this kind of discussion comes up, which is essentially, but when are you no longer human?
Yeah, I was going to get into that because, so the next phase of like implants that I would totally get is, okay, this is actually a philosophical question, and it's one that I've always found really interesting and really does challenge my view on this. So I'm not religious, as you guys know. I'm not religious at all. I don't believe in the idea of a soul whatsoever. I just think that we're bodies, and when we die, and that's that, right? Okay, that's my premise. So if I was offered a memory implant that would improve my memory, say tenfold, say it literally stores a year's worth of content for browsable very quickly, parsable with my own brain very quickly. And I'm like, this is great. I come to the end of a year and I get the 10-year upgrade. And I'm like, okay, get to the end of 10 years and I get the 100-year upgrade. And, say I'm now 70 years old. I've got 45 years of my life stored in this chip. And maybe some stored in my brain, but mostly stored in these chips. Am I less human now and more robot, or am I more human? Okay, now let's go a little bit further. Let's say that I could get an upgrade which would transfer my entire brain into these chips, and I could live there forever. And say the brain dies, and it's fine. I've moved my consciousness across. Am I still alive, or have I died? And it's something that I really, really struggle with. And here just to finalize my argument of why I struggle so much. Equally, if you could not move, that's assuming there's a single move, right? Data from here to data to here, right? Brain to hardware is literally moving the exact data across, and it's effectively getting wiped.
Assuming we fully understand everything it means to what the brain, how it functions in such a way that we truly copy a one-for-one. Yeah.
But, okay, let's say it's not a copy. Let's say it's actually moving, right? That's what my point is. It's not copying. Gotcha. It's a move.
Okay. But a full replication of how the brain's working.
What if we made a clone of me? And that clone has the exact same memories, exact same molecular structure as my brain, and is therefore the exact same thing. And then I got a gun to my head. I'm technically replaceable, right? I could die because why is the clone better than me or worse than me? It's exactly the same. If only one needs to exist, then I could potentially die and be worthless, right? And that's kind of the idea of a clone, right? The idea of a clone or having yourself backed up is that you could, if you're dying, you can be reborn. But I would be able to see this clone across from me, and I'd be like, I don't want to die. I don't feel what that clone's feeling anymore. I am me. I'm different.
One of the biggest challenges when it comes to, because it's the question of what consists of us, right? What is humanity in that sense? And whether, like, I will argue that part of that is the discussion or definition of what a soul is. It's just classically, it's come out from a perspective of the limitations of people's understandings of science at the time. But that as a whole, the question is based on, you could sum up kind of what you're talking about as a soul, as a convenient label for that experience.
Yeah.
Because the idea being that I am totally cool with that level of augmentation and stuff like that, where I would say it depends somewhat on how it interfaces with your brain. If memory is an augmentation, or for me, because I have my own theories, and this is partly me justifying how I could do this and not worry about this as much, is that I actually believe our gray matter retains every memory we've ever experienced. I believe our challenge with memory is more accessing it, is our index and retrieval system, to put in somewhat computer terms.
I agree.
Because the old theory that we had way back in the day of we only use some percentage of our brain, 10, 50%.
I get where it comes from, right? It makes sense.
And that's where I say, actually, I think we use all of our brain. It's just we're only accessing portions as needed, and some of those, the way we memorize things, fit better in different portions of the brain, right? Be it physical, smell, logic, whatever.
I would say that for whatever reason, evolution has made it so that us not remembering everything is actually better. Maybe we'd have what's the thing? There are a few individuals who have that mutation in their brain, or they've had a head injury which unlocks this or whatever, where they have a photogenic memory. And the problem with it is that they're not suddenly super intelligent. They quite a lot of them are still cleaners or like minimum wage workers. They're not like at NASA and solving all the biggest problems with quantum computing, right?
It's not their logic processing or thought. Yeah, it's just their ability to access the memories they have.
And memory is different from understanding, right?
Yes. Yeah.
If you can read a textbook and quote it back to somebody, that's great. But what use is it if you can memorize the textbook on, I don't know, molecular biology, but then they put you in front of an experiment table, you wouldn't have an idea what to do, because you still you can quote paragraphs, but you don't understand them. You're basically just
you can't
quoting
innovate
verbatim some words.
Yeah, you can't innovate. It's like you could follow an instruction manual, but you can't necessarily react on the fly and make decisions that aren't already something that you've created. Not by default. I mean, people might still have that ability, but I mean, it's just by having photographic memory. So that's where I'm saying that if you augmented your regular gray matter and just simply made your ability to access your indexing system smarter or more easily accessible, I could, in my mind, come up with a way or a means or understanding that I'm totally down with that. You're right. You're not actually adding memory, you're just making it easier to find, especially because the other problem that comes from there is once you have a way in which you are storing the memory through a different device, I think you could then have too easy of a way of fabricating information and memories, and that I think has a whole nother bag of worms when it comes to the idea of being cybernetic, that I personally don't want to go down the road of too far. But when you get into that, and especially specifically when you're talking about the idea that you could replicate everything physically or whatever the experience of thought processes and channels and how your neutrons are firing and all that kind of thing in your brain, and in doing so, theoretically, people like the idea that you could, transfer your consciousness to something else is a way to kind of describe what's trying to be accomplished. But like you brought up, the challenge is if you make such a good vessel and process and ability to do what your brain does, what is it you're really transferring? Are you just turning it on, and now what you've now created acts, feels, reacts every way that you were at the time it was created? Because we don't currently have a true understanding of what you would be transferring to pull your consciousness from your current body into another. We don't
And
know
I
what
think
that
that's
is.
that's the sad truth of it is we are not actually like people always say that we're the end product of an entire life of experiences and memories. And yeah, that's part of our brain state. But the sad truth is we're actually the cells and the biological being that contains that information. And so if that information was transferred elsewhere, we, the cells, the actual biological mechanism, would still be left behind. So you cannot truly be immortal with the aid of robots or AI or
like I
even
said, as
CrossFit.
far as we understand, right? If
That's not my personal belief anyway.
If there was some way that we could understand what some of our body, so maybe it's more than the brain, maybe it's other cells or pieces or interactions, actually create us. It's why in like Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that, when they talk about it, in most cases, what they rely on in those is that you've augmented everything else of the body, but usually they leave the brain at minimum intact, that it fully exists, even though it's connected fully. But the other piece they often I've seen in ones that are also thinking it is the spine. That it's a lot of, theoretic and sci-fi and stuff of how they would do it. They encase the brain and the spinal cord in a mechanical system that's able to access it all, the nerves and everything else. And that, in a way, that's a possibility for what might allow you to basically fully augment. But that's going to be one of the challenges, because at some point, we're going to have that, right? We already have people who are getting prosthetics to replace pieces of body parts, and they are getting better and stuff. I mean, I can 3D print, and with some software and some basic servos, things like that, basically build someone a robotic arm.
Yeah.
It's a real thing today, and they've already shown augmentation that's allowing the blind to see, the deaf to hear. Right now, it's all about bringing people back in some ways to what an average human might be. Well, because there's also a discussion point there of what about, oh God, there's so many theoretical things about this. It's not just scientific yet, where, what about people who were born with a deformity or a lacking thing? Giving them something they never had, are you now changing who they were at a core level? Or are you just, giving them access to something they maybe didn't have before that other people do? Someone who was born without the ability to walk to suddenly find a mechanism to give them that ability. Have we now changed them from who they were? I say this because there are groups, right, that are against augmentation in any way.
So I actually know a couple people who were part of the deaf community who had this opinion of deaf people being cured. Right?
Yes, cured. I think we've talked about it a little bit before.
Yeah. So I had a couple people that I knew through uni years ago who I discussed this with, and they were kind of against the idea of people leaving the deaf community. But I was like, you're not really leaving the community. You're just getting an extra sense, really. It's not really. I think it's a bit mad, but there you go.
Right, and that's part of it. And so then you go that step further of, as we start to look at, can we build ourselves up differently? At what point are you doing something, I don't know, wrong? For my thing, there's aspects of my interaction in life. Initially, it would be to get rid of areas of me that provide pain, constant pain type stuff. Then secondarily, it'd be ways to augment my daily experience in life. That's why I was talking about, like, a replacement eye, maybe one of my ears or something that can mimic normal, but if I chose to, could become more sensitive, do things like that. Have a software integration in it where if, like, by default something gets to too high a decibel level, it, reduces it, like works as its own mute, things like that. Just ways you could make it so that your life is more, easier to live day to day. And then on top of that, it becomes for choice, for fun, for whatever you're after, right? I want, to be able to run this fast and therefore replace my legs in such a way that it enables that, or just whatever the case may be, right? And we don't know. We don't know where it'll go. I will tell you that as soon as there's money involved, that you can do those things by choice, and somehow it gets past whatever ethics communities are there to kind of stop it, you better believe it'll happen everywhere.
Yeah. It's happening anyway, right? It's going to happen anyway. But I just put in the chat a slight side note to this conversation. But Gravity Industries put together a $440,000 jet suit that you can purchase,
I saw that.
Which is a standalone. You're not connected to anything else, and it gives you the ability to fly. It just looks so freaking cool. Basically, you attach two major, well, maybe like three.
Well, so
three
it's actually,
hands.
I believe it has a rear pack, right? The main thrusters
Yes.
in the back that give you lift, and then it's got a double, I believe, on each arm that allows you to do kind of your maneuvering.
Mm-hmm. So it looks insanely cool because you can the guy's just flying. Like there's one scene where there's a truck driving away and he just flies towards the truck casually and lands on it. It just looks so goddamn cool. That's what I was saying in the chat was if I could augment myself with anything, I'd probably get something like that. Like,
well,
why would I bother with legs or arms if I can fly, right? I mean,
well, you'd kind of want a combination, I'd think. But there is that, well, I mean, just because I keep saying there's the challenge of until society is set up in such a way that you can maneuver and do everything that you do today with different manipulations of the body, because right now it's all built around the traditional human form, that you would have some challenges, right? Depending, you get rid of your legs, maybe you're not so bad, but reaching things, sitting on things, doing all these other little just daily interactions might become more difficult. Don't know. Now I will say if I could somehow get my bowels to be reconfigured in a mechanical way that it automatically packages things up in like a condenser type thing, and conveniently you hit a button and eject little condensed packets of
it'd be like
waste.
Futurama. You get fuel. You get those little. It's like extremely dense, heavy material. You can just throw it in a generator. There you go.
Something like that. Triple filter your urine in such a way and stuff like that. So equally, you could stay hydrated in your body longer. But all waste materials get put into these convenient little box things that you could now go weeks without actually doing something or whatever or some time frame.
Right? Why not?
Again, convenience of life. Things like that. I'd be totally down.
I'd also love to get my heart replaced with something that's infallible.
Which we continue to get better things like that. And that's the funny part, right? When a valve fails, you can replace it. Now we are doing it, I think, in a more interesting way, which is growing them with stem cells and things like that and actually doing it. They showed someone did basically a 3D printed heart for someone that was fully printed. I want to say it was the core. I forget how the technology works, but it's a core base material that has no genetic material in it. And then you add some of the own cells around it and it grows properly around it, and therefore it's fully acceptable. They don't have to take drugs the rest of their lives to make it compatible and things like that. So there are some really slick things from tech, but you got to imagine if that was the case, especially for someone that had their whole lives a weaker heart, if you could in general print one that is optimal, you still follow all the lines, right? But you now give someone who always had maybe a torn valve or somehow it didn't work quite right, and you put a really quality heart in there. Of course, now again, we get into the same challenge, because even if it's not cybernetics, there's also bioengineering levels of this, where what if I started producing a more efficient heart, where it does the same functionality, fits in there, and it's basically the same, but I've been able to find a way in that size to produce it to pump more efficiently, right? I model it, and here's the fun part, right? Because admittedly, as my brain's processing the concept as we go, I don't want to have the conceit of trying to think that we can do better than nature, because nature's had a whole lot of time to figure it out.
Of course we can. We are nature acting
well, okay, no.
Consciously.
Human conceit, though, is to say that we understand everything about some way something works, and therefore we can innovate on it, which unfortunately when it comes to nature, I think we miss it so often. It comes with nutrition, things like that stuff. But I do believe
that's a learning curve, but then we eventually do trump it.
But what I do believe we could do is, at least in a way that would be a little less risky, would be to take from what we can observe as the most, well-produced version of a human in certain aspects, top-end athletes and things like that, and be able to model that replacement heart off of theirs. And so you're still taking what nature has created and using it as a blueprint to simply take, this is so bad because it's like cheating, right? Take the top athlete's heart that's the most efficient and put it in the person who's been lazy and shite their whole life sitting on a couch, right? Those kind of things, and start replacing
They've now got an insane ability to, cardiovascular health peak value.
I love the concept of this. And Earthweaver, I say all of these things much in the way that I understand your industry, because my brother's a coach in sports. He's saying you'll have to rethink anything competitive-wise once enhancements come into play. In a way, I think it's similar to kind of off-color discussions have been about the Olympics and things like that. That you have what we currently try to maintain for fairness in the Olympics and sports today, and then you have the augmented league, where it's kind of almost like race cars and classes and stuff.
I would happily sign a waiver that says I will never take part in any sporting event ever that is competitive in any nature, in exchange for a longer, happier, and healthier life. Yep. Okay, I'll do it. I'll sign it. Give it to me. Give me the thing now. I'm happy to not do sports. Anyway, never mind the situation. So it's just a free trade for me. I'm not losing anything. But yeah. So that was a bit of a tangent.
Sometimes it's kind of a fun one, right? Because we love technology. We love the ideas of doing these things and not being on that forefront of what's possible. I mean, I've commented before that the opportunity to adjust ourselves, like we've talked about with the end of your DNA chains. You had it last time we talked.
Telomeres.
Yeah, the telomeres of extending our own life, right? Being able to just reset our body to say, hey, remember when I was 20? Could you process my body the way you did back then? Because it's not changing the way we live, right? It's just trying to reset ourselves to a different time within our own lives. And I'm actually, in the sense, kind of down with that, because it's just, I guess, cheating nature in a sense of you did it right, except for this whole point where you want us to die. So can you put us back a little bit? Because
dying is very useful so that we can
evolution and change it. Yeah.
It's
part of the cycle. And so,
however, we're getting to a point where evolution is not quite as fast or as impressive or moving forward as our minds are. I think in the next 200 years, the potential of what we can do to our own genome is going to be much bigger than what any kind of natural evolution could do in 200 years.
Well, and that's where I think it'll be interesting, because we have the straight mechanical options out there of cybernetics, bionics, things like that. And then we have the enhancing what we have in a biological way with things. Because I'm a huge fan of things like human growth hormone and stuff like that, right? Because again, not reaching into, as you were saying, signing the waivers, doing whatever you need, to not be competitive. I'd like it just for daily life. If I could honestly take some kind of treatment that basically changed the way my body performs to make it act as though I'm younger.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily, and admittedly, concern that it could reduce my timeline, how long I might live, maybe I burn it out. But if that weren't the case, and I'm actually able to actually reset or make my body more efficient, I am totally down. Let me live every day where I wake up I'm ready to go. I take a little bit of caffeine and bam, all day long. Waha! And I can run 10 miles without.
If we could take a pill that would actually make us immortal, would we do it?
Yes.
No, wait, sorry. What? You're just immortal.
Well, okay, so the way I discuss it, immortal, I put it this way. In order to take away a lot of the concerns with enhancing a person's longevity of life, my theory, my concept and thought is that you allow people to take whatever the treatment might be, pill, something like that, it may take more than that, to essentially reset their telomeres and stuff like that, whatever it is that actually would get you to live whatever age you are continuously, or even regress some and be healthier and things like that. However, in the process, I believe in order to maintain humanity, while taking it, it renders you, completely infertile.
Infertile? Yeah.
And the reason being, right, because that comes into one of the biggest concerns, is that you would overpopulate all our resources far too quickly. And so what you would allow is that once someone wants to have a family, they would have to come off of whatever the treatment is. And there would have to be basically a rule that once you came off it, that's it, you're off it. You don't get to come back.
We have it based on resources available, and we're assuming that on Earth we're always going to have the finite amount. It's not true. I mean, we're eventually, especially if we get immortality, we'll be able to just send a ship off for what would normally be 20 generations.
But even that, right?
Star.
But that's fine, because what you have then is the people who are doing that can stay alive indefinitely, and once you get there, you can go, and once you're ready to populate, you get off the drug. Or in the sense, I could see some opportunity where it's a challenge, right? Because what's the goal? If the goal is expansion, because we're a plague to the universe and we need to expand, then you'd almost want it as an area that people that are currently still alive would have to make a pilgrimage. You still would want to keep the same concept because we continue to expand as we do today. So even when people get off the drug, there's going to be people that have multiple kids and things like that. And I want to give people that opportunity to still make those choices, but do it in such a way that long term it doesn't, affect society by forcing us out of resources.
Sure. I agree. Yep.
So that it's just one of my ways to at least manage that concern. I know there's loopholes. There's ways the rich will get around it, custom size that they can do both and things like that. But in general, I
think people would still die, right? I mean, immortality doesn't mean you can't die.
Yeah, no, you'd still die of...
People would still get hit by cars, buildings, or whatever else.
That would still be natural. And there's the challenge there that if someone was trying to live their life forever and then died and never had a chance to have kids, what's that mean? But that's part of the choice. And again, you make it a choice, and you manage it like that. And yes, Earth, I agree, there would potentially be a black market. It'd be tough to manage, but I just say that's at least a concept that makes the idea a little more passable, because if you don't include that as a piece of it, you're risking too much.
You're risking immortality with hunger and poverty. No thanks.
I think most would rather live forever and live a crap life forever.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I don't know. It's one of those things I enjoy the idea of. All right, we have, like you said...
allocated cup of oats for the day. Enjoy.
Oh, gosh. Well, and that's the thing, right? I agree. We have definitely gone off on our own little fun tangent so far this show, starting out. To get into our normal flow of things, we will kick back in and kind of ask what's been going on and stuff like that. Although, this is fun, and I really like that you guys are having some interaction with us on what your thoughts are. I would say if you have a more detailed thought that you would like to get out that you can't get in chat, feel free to email us at showx at VtWProductions.com so that, well, it's me multitasking, and so that you can express yourself more completely, even if we read it next week or something like that. I'm very curious to kind of catch people's thoughts on this because I find it a very fun subject. It's not the first time I've talked about it. So I think it'd be interesting to see do you want to be augmented? First kind of thing for everybody. It's like, do you want to be augmented? Is this something that even enters your brain? What do you see as some of the pros and cons of things like getting augmented? Separately, do you want to live forever or have some choice on how long you live, or are you happy with what nature provides? And what are some of the thoughts around that? Does it force a certain kind of interaction with the world because you have a limited time? Would people change in fundamental ways that would make the experience not worth it if you could live longer? Things like that, it's just things to theorize about.
10,000 hours to become a master, right? So I think what most of us would do is just start putting in time, because most of us can't be I do want to be a master of knitting and weaving and using the loom and whatever else, but I don't want to do it in this lifetime because I don't have enough time, and it's such an interest to me. If I had unlimited time, I'd master all the things.
But
all
that's
of them.
The interesting thing, right? Because while I think you and I, Ken, are very similar in how we can perceive the world and seeing like some opportunities that would come of something like this, I argue that a lot of people maybe don't, because I equally know a lot of people who I've asked, would you want to live forever? And they're just like, God, no. And so while it may not translate to us as well, I think it's an interesting question to see what other people as a whole think.
Well, I need to do this because, I make so many Jesus rising dough jokes that I'm definitely going to hell when I die. So I need to live forever. It's the only way I can
to avoid the wrath.
Yeah, because that's one way to avoid hell, right? Just don't die. So that's the plan.
That's another interesting perspective. And so, again, it would be interesting. Interesting concept. Just throwing that out there. I'd love to hear more from you guys. Yeah. And like I said, especially long format, I'd love to hear some, not just a reaction to what we're saying, but take some time in this next week and think about it a bit and give us your feedback. It would be wonderful to hear because you obviously kind of catch where Ken and I are at, but I want to know what you guys think. So, all right. With that, yes?
So I was going to say, speaking of Christian holidays, I actually have a friend who is actually celebrating Easter authentically.
So we are officially transitioning into
Dysfunctional Deviations.
And yeah, I have a friend who's actually celebrating Easter and like put on Facebook like Happy Easter, everybody! May Jesus love you all, yada yada yada. And I was like, wow, I actually have a Christian friend that's like openly says this on Facebook. Like I know, like I was talking to Ken about this, and she was saying how in the U.S. obviously this is much more of a common thing, but here Christians or any religious people usually are pretty quiet, keep it to themselves, kind of thing, because the culture has shifted away from being openly religious at all. It was always a sort of conservative in your own house thing anyway. But now with the rise of atheism and agnosticism being the major religion of choice in the UK, most people tend to be quite quiet about it. But I actually had a friend who was openly celebrating it today, and I was just kind of shocked. I was like, wow, I've never seen this before. This is weird. And is it, how are you, Wayne? Is that pretty common with your friends and your groups?
Well, so how do I put it? Direct interaction with me. People I think that I hang out with most of the time are pretty darn considerate about not throwing their beliefs in anyone's face. If you go to experience your religion or their religion with other people and stuff like that, cool, whatever, fine, that works. Yet I feel like most of them, or a lot of people I know, will still be pretty open about showing their thoughts on religion on social media. And so while it doesn't get thrown in my face by someone actually talking to me, I see a lot of people share a lot of, not even memes, but inspirational quotes, discussions where they're open. I know several people are very open about saying like, praise God, he has saved me, and things like that on social media. The nice thing is, because again, though, the nice thing is most of them are not targeting me with it. They're like openly sharing to anyone who wants to pay attention to it, because they're not like, that is most of them are not accusatory, right? They're, I believe this, I feel that God has done this. Most of them are like that. I post
this on my Facebook timeline.
And my friend if you want. I'm totally cool with that, right? Until they start doing the whole judging thing on that, because that changes the way it feels. And so I'm totally cool with people that want to share your beliefs out there for people to read, choose to understand or not, because I can scroll right past something. It doesn't bother me. And so I see a lot of that. And in a way, I think that's one of the more positive aspects of social media, for as many things we have that are perhaps negative, that it's a way for people to still feel like they're getting some expression out there without necessarily having to, directly engage with people in a way that might not be, felt comfortable with or reciprocated of like, thanks, I wanted that in my face, and so it's interesting. I see what you're saying, but yeah, no. So I do have, because I know a lot of the people around me, I am pretty aware of their religious views, but we are good enough not to bring those discussions up constantly.
Okay, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever had it. Other than family members, I've had nobody openly speak to me about religion in a public setting, unless maybe over dinner or whatever it comes up in conversation, or drinks with friends and stuff, or amongst colleagues when we're all distracted and hanging out or something. Then yeah, but otherwise, there's no conversations with this kind of thing normally anyway, which is probably why it's interesting, right? I guess that's part of why it's interesting. But no, I have no other friends on Facebook that have ever posted anything about praying, about anything religious.
Interesting.
It just does not happen. I see a few atheist quotes getting thrown around, but that's it. That's honestly it. And so I think there's a cultural difference as well. I think in the US it is a bit more of a, I'm going to church, I better share it on Facebook. Whereas here, I think if you're going to church, you don't tell people.
Well, so the thing there is, right, asking. Even then, I don't see people that often share that they're going to church. But like on a day like today, I have every expectation to see the people that I tend to believe are more religious to post something. And it's usually like some pretty picture and he has risen and things like that, and has saved me and things like that. It's all right, cool. That's fine. And like, whereas the other side of it is I also see a lot of people who do the same thing I do, which they express the whole like, zombie Jesus comment, at which point I chuckle and figure I kind of get an idea of where they're coming from. So yeah, it's interesting. Oh, it's funny. A friend of mine is commenting that they had gone to church. They're actually visiting family, and had done the whole Easter Sunday thing, and then were really distressed because in finishing church tried to get stop by a coffee shop on the way back, like home, to get something to drink, and it was closed because of Easter Sunday. And so now they're like suffering for like,
Oh, right.
God, all I want is a latte, right? Or something on this day, because they themselves are not very religious. And so they're doing the family thing.
Okay, that makes sense. I follow this great page on Facebook called You Okay Hun, and it's referencing that it kind of makes fun of like young mothers or uneducated people who post on Facebook constantly, tag themselves when they go to the hospital just for attention, like without any references to why they're there, right? Checked in at emergency ward. And then when people ask, "Are you okay?"
Yes.
When they're like, "Are you okay?" They're like, "PM me, hun." It's like it's just such an attention-grabbing thing, right? These kind of people is what this page posts about mostly. So it's "You okay, hun?" I find it hilarious. They posted up a tweet from a guy called That Con Artist on Twitter who said, "And on Easter Sunday, Jesus did rise, decreeing that the big the big Walmart must close in his honor, but the express store can stay open for the essentials." I thought that was pretty good. But
that's
That's
entertaining.
like a meme page sharing that, right? I don't have any friends otherwise really sharing anything.
Well, and I, as I'm looking through my feed briefly, it's like I don't really see much. But again, I know certain people, when I see their feed, there'll be something there. That makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, cool. All right. But again, it's one of those that I'm aware of kind of how my feed exists. But I think that is general, and one of the rules I have for social media is that you should be aware of kind of what fills your media stream and control it, so that while in my mind I am aware of how people that I disagree with think, I don't allow myself to be bombarded by things that are negative or a complete mess that some people fear, I guess. I don't know. I think there's a balance there somewhere. Yeah, I have my thoughts. Some people have different levels of what they are comfortable doing. So I can't tell everyone how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing I had on my list was I feel like I cannot wait to finish my PhD and have some time off. I would really like 3-month vacation right about now. Like, can somebody pay me 3 months wage to sit and play video games? I would really, really appreciate it. I'm feeling quite burnt out with work. And I keep thinking about taking time off, and I did treat myself to a couple of games of League this weekend.
This is good.
And I really shouldn't have, because I really didn't have the time to do that, but I did it anyway. And I would really like to have 3 months paid time to have off, please. That would be that'd be awesome. However, then the reason I say paid as well is because I mentioned in previous last couple of shows that I didn't get paid at the start of this month. So this is the first month I've gone without pay in pretty much my entire adult life.
That hurts.
And it's really tough. Now, we had some savings and stuff. Well, sorry, that's not true. We had backups in terms of credit cards and stuff.
Which is also no fun.
Well, the thing is that we didn't. The credit card's always like an absolute backup. It's never to be used otherwise, and it's really just a small amount of cash. It's like £500 or something. So it's really not. It's not something we can really rely on. So I have really learned how to be frugal this month, and I have decided that I'm going to share my tips today on how to save money generally, especially during times of hardship.
I can appreciate that.
But I think it's some good advice that I've picked up. So the first sorry, I did type this out as well, so it's available for everybody else. Prices occasionally. Okay, so the first thing I did was at the start of the month, I thought to myself, okay, I've got some bills coming out this month that are quite expensive. I wonder if I can reduce them. Not paying more money is a good way to save money. So I called up my energy company. I called up my mobile phone company. I called up my broadband. I called up just everybody that I could that I pay money to, and I said, can I just said openly to them, is there any way that I can reduce my bills? And 2 of them said yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so my Vodafone, my phone bill, that we do our phone bills with the broadband like jointly, and they said that they'd happily just apply a discount for us. I was like, okay, great.
That's
so
awesome.
I got an extra 10% on top off just because I asked for it, which was really nice. The other one was I checked my energy comparison website in the UK. It's called Money Saving Expert here in the UK. It's great. Government commissioned one that was opened due to people being really bad, like due to companies being really bad in the 90s with credit cards.
Oh
This
man,
was
if
opened,
only
and
our government did that instead of the opposite. Huh.
yeah.
Anyhow.
Well, it was very, very useful, and you can go in there and you just put in all your details that you have about your energy, how much you currently pay per month, how much you use, your meter readings, like ideally, and stuff like that. And it'll say, okay, this is the scheme you're currently on. Here's every other one that's available, and which one is the best one for you.
Nice.
Ranked by price or user ratings, or if there's rewards in terms of like getting cash back or whatever. And yeah, I found out I could cut off £25 a month, and I also went fully eco. So I'm no longer this house is no longer burning oil or coal. This is entirely wind now. This house, which is great. So all the energy goes into renewables, which is great.
That is cool.
And it's also saving you money. So call up the companies that you give money to and say, hey, what do you have any other deals? Do you have anything available? What can you do? I also did the same last year, actually. I said to them, look, I'm really interested in upgrading my phone, but I've got 4 months to go. What can you guys do? And they said, oh, you can upgrade now. I was like, how much would that cost me? They're like, oh, no, it's fine.
Really?
Just carry on your contract right now. Just as long as you stay with us for another 2 years on the same contract you're on, we won't add any costs on top, and we'll cut off the rest of your current contract, which was like a £500 bill. So I was like, wow. Yes, please. That was because they'd rather get paid £1,400 over 2 years than $500 in the next 3. It makes sense for them. They're making a profit. But yeah, so always call them and check, and you never know. You can actually save quite a lot of money by doing that, especially over a year, right?
No, I appreciate that. That's good information.
Look for knockoff brands for everything. For example, I one of the common ones is shampoo. And this is actually something I recently read on Reddit as well. Other people said something similar. Basically, go to your shop, the one that you prefer to go to, Walmart or whatever it is. Get the cheapest shampoo they have. Try it. If it's terrible, go 1 tier up the next time. Just 1 tier up. So instead of the 25-cent shampoo, go for the 32-cent shampoo. Right? Increase it 1 by 1. And eventually you'll find the one that you say, actually, that's a lot better and I'm happy with this. And that's the one that not only suits your quality, but also suits your budget.
Interesting.
Right? That's how you do it. And I've got one that is a local. It's kind of seen as like a bargain shop, like a cheap shop. It's Lidl's. It's a European shop, and they do a knockoff of Head and Shoulders called Cian.
Okay.
And I usually get Head and Shoulders because I've got fairly bad dandruff. So I got Cian and I tried it out, and yeah, I've been using it for weeks now, and I don't have dandruff. It's just this. It does the job that Head and Shoulders did. And instead of being £4.50 for a big bottle, I got a big bottle for like £1.
Oh wow, nice.
So yeah, it's a huge improvement. Also, whenever you go hotels and maybe you don't want to use that crappy like soap that they have, take it home with you, because when you're at a point where you really struggle, I've got a desk drawer. In fact, I'll see if I can get a hand.
I have under my sink. I have, because whenever I've traveled for work, stuff like that. If ever I found a shampoo, or when I go to cons, things like that. If I find a shampoo and conditioner set that I like the results of, I always grab like one a day. It's like I'm already paying so much for the hotel room that I figure that's just included in the price.
Yeah, like that's it is. And I've got about 30, 40 bottles there of conditioner, shampoo, and body wash that I am currently going through because I don't want to go and refill the stuff that I normally buy because this is free, right? I paid for this last year at a hotel. Why wouldn't I use it? Same with when I'm washing the dogs. I actually use hotel shampoos because it's still shampoo. It's absolutely fine for the dogs, and they've never had any skin issues. They never had any dandruff issues. No hair loss issues. Honestly, it's perfectly fine. As long as it's not a weirdly perfumed one, it's usually okay. Hot meals aren't required 3 times a day. I have this weird thing where I don't really believe in the idea of a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I just eat when I'm hungry, and I eat what I want. And I'll add in health in there occasionally. Like, oh, I really want this, but I should probably be healthy, so I'll have this. But I don't really give a crap whether it's 8 a.m. or it's noon. I'm not going to suddenly be like, oh, well, culture says I must have these food types because culture. No, that's dumb. I've never understood it. There's no scientific basis for it. Cereal in the morning has a is minorly useful, I guess. But most studies show that protein's actually better. So eggs are better for you in the morning.
Yes.
That's Kitten Features home, by the way. That's why the dogs just went crazy.
The dogs just woke up like, hey!
Yeah, they're like, oh my god, mom's home. So instead of having 3 hot meals a day like I enjoy doing, just get like sandwiches, have like toast, have there's other nice foods you can have. Cook big meals. So buy the base ingredients, and it actually saves a lot of time as well. Rather than making a different meal every single night, whether it be a ready meal or whatever, make a big bowl of soup or a big bowl of like cheesy rice or pasta or whatever, and then freeze it, and then do it again, and have enough for the fridge as well. Also, buy Tupperware. Buy Tupperware that you can bring into work and take into work with you, because I found I can now spend like 17 pence on a lunchtime meal through making a big bowl of soup, rather than spending like £3 at the university. It's so much cheaper. Or a big bowl of chili as well. It's also great. When you're hanging out with friends, ask them to chill out. Just be like, hey, let's not do this really expensive thing we had planned. What else can we do? Do you guys want to play some board games instead? Instead of us going to the bar to have a few drinks, do you want to just stay inside and we'll buy a bottle between us? And you can save so much money. And usually most people actually really appreciate it as well. I mean, it's nice to occasionally go out and splurge, but I think if any of the friends are needing a bit of budgeting at the time, you'd understand, and so don't be afraid to ask your friends to have a cheaper night out instead.
Oh yeah, no, I'm always down for like, hey, let's come over, and heck, I think you can go a step further with that, and it's not like save your potlucks for work, but like, hey, everybody bring a dish, let's come over and have a nice dinner together and watch a movie or play games or something like that.
Absolutely.
Because it's similar to when I host some of my events, except that we go a little silly because I host too big. But when you really do it right, you could easily save a lot of cost.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I love to invite people over just to watch a movie or something like that. Like, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. Will you watch some episodes of The Grand Tour or something and like hang out?
Another point is, if you hang around with like friends, different houses, make sure you rotate it, because if you have friends come over to your house, they'll usually bring snacks and stuff and have leftovers, and then you can be the one that benefits once in a while, and that's nice. Make the most of things you already have. So in your freezer, go through all the stuff that's been sitting there for 3 months, for 6 months, for 9 months. Use it. Like you've got vegetables, got whatever else in there, use them. Why not? Same with books and games. If you find yourself really wanting to buy that new game and you're like, it's $45. Should I really be buying a game right now? I'm trying to budget. Just look at your library. You'll find that there's like dozens of games that you need to play anyway that you want to go back and play again. Just use those. Make the most of it. And I've kind of been doing it with League, actually. That's been my go-to.
I feel targeted.
No, it's not. That's not a target.
No, I'm joking, but in the sense that I have a ridiculous Steam library of games I need to play, and the challenge is every once in a while I do find something newer coming out that's like, wait, I am actually hyped for this and want to be for a change on the forefront of a new game coming out.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But I say this, and I play the crap out of League and played some PUBG yesterday and things like that, so it's like, yeah, I still play all the old games. I still haven't picked up. And it's funny, I was just looking at an article about, it's a game that I'm actually really interested to play, but haven't picked it up because I know I have too many things I need to play, as I tend to put that. It's the really hard Japanese-themed game that come out recently. And so it's that one that oh gosh, what's the name of it? Sayuku something or whatever. I just seen it in the feed I was looking at. Anyhow, but like it looks beautiful. I've heard it's as hard as any of like the Dark Souls and stuff like those games.
And, it's Sakura or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that one, right? Whichever that one is.
Yeah.
And so it seems like something I would really enjoy trying to put my hand at, but I can't justify it, right? I have too many games I need to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same goes with books, audiobooks and stuff. And remember, games that you've enjoyed 5 years ago, if you pick up and play it again, it won't feel like you're just playing it again. You'd probably be re-experiencing about 85% of it as something that you're not seen in so long. It'll feel like a fresh experience again. So even games that you have played before or books you have read before, reuse them. They're like, you don't keep that book in your bookshelf for no reason, right? Reread it because that's what's there for.
No, I do actually reread most of my books at some point.
Yeah. But that's all my frugal tips, and that's bang on 8, so that's ideal. But unless you want to go into yours first, sir.
So the fun part is I don't have any dysfunctional deviations this week. Everything I did, I think I categorize as being geeky in some way. And so there's that. What I will say also is if you have any Geek Cred you would like to throw at us, please email us at showx@vtwproductions.com because we'll be taking a break and coming right back with Geek Cred. And so with that, you're listening to ShowX, and we're going to listen to a song from Edifice. And, because my buddy, and it's great. And this one, so we'll make it so that we're back in about 6 minutes or so. And so we will see you then. So with that, you're listening to ShowX, and we'll be back right after this.
Dysfunctional Deviations.
No, that's not what I wanted.
Send in your emails to showx@vtwproductions.com.
Removed.
listening to ShowX on VtWProductions.com. I'm a geek. Are you a geek? Geek Cred, level up!
That's right, everybody. Welcome back to the show, and we're starting off right away with some Geek Cred. And so I am going to kick things off with it today, as everything I've done, like I said, has been geek. So, as we start things, I was going to talk about, I've had some struggles where I've been trying for months now to set up a better network-attached storage for my overall household. And so in doing so, I've picked up a lot of like old server equipment to the point where Kuro's seen it before and tried to help me understand and things like this, and back and forth. And it is doing a great job of reminding me how in many things technology, I am still quite a noob. And in the sense that one of the better things I did and found, and I think was a good purchase, still looks like it was a decent enough purchase, was a super micro, was it a 1U? Server, but it's dual Xeon server with 32 gigs of ECC memory and basically plenty of ability to run all of the background services and stuff I want. You know, I want to be able to run a Plex server. I want to be able to edit my photos directly from the NAS device, like I do currently on my just regular server I have, but it's not very optimal speed-wise. And so opportunities to kind of just improve that workflow and to make my ability to expand my overall storage a lot easier. That, you know, hot swappable drives, things like that, and just instead of having to rewire an old server case every time I do it with new hard drives and lose some capability or silly things like that, right? So I have a desire to build it. And in trying to get the enclosure for the drives, because the super microcomputer was nice, it came with like 16 bays, I think, at the front, but the challenge is they're all 2.5-inch drives, which means I can either run dedicated SAS drives, which are super fast and fun, except that they cost a lot and have very low storage. Like at most you can get about 600 gigs per SAS in that size. So what I've done instead is put SSDs in there. So I currently have like 4 SSDs, but they're smaller because I want to actually improve the overall storage I have. But I have those as kind of cache drives and things like that. So again, to overall make my experience faster and more fun. To do the mass storage size, I've been trying to pick up hard drive enclosures that would allow me to put a bunch of old-fashioned 3.5-inch drives in there. That will be slower, but will allow me to do big storage. Because right now I have a couple 5 terabyte drives in my main server, but they're just individual 5 terabyte drives. They're not rated, anything like that. So at any point they could fail, I'd lose everything, and that'd be bad. So again, trying to do the smart data thing and kind of cover all the bases. So in doing that, I picked up my first enclosure that looked like it was a great deal online, used but said everything would be fine. Grabbed it for $100-something, not terrible, but something that was supposed to hold like 20 bays. And when I got it, I could not, no matter what I tried, get it to work. It was a combination of getting that enclosure and getting a couple of LSI-based basically HBAs, which are host bus adapters. They basically allow a board to support multiple drives. Some of them will support as many as like 1,000+ hard drives attached to the host bus adapter. So it's able to address all of the different hard drives. This is what you use in server farms to do mass networking of all kinds of drives.
Makes sense. Yep.
Yep. And so it's the same hardware, and I'm just trying to use some of the older stuff to put it into my home. And, you know, people do it all the time, and I thought I had researched and read all the things I needed to. But that first enclosure I got, I could not get it to work, to link, to do anything to make it know that it was alive. So, struggles there. And so I eventually found a deal on Marketplace and said, okay, there's someone selling one that he has definitely tested works and still has drives in it, and so at least I'll get some extra storage with it. I think this other one was like $300. I was like, all right, let me grab that. Seems like a decent pricing for this anyways, and actually has SAS drives in there. Or at least they're the ones that are like 15,000 RPM drives, if that gives you an idea for their speed. And got it all plugged in, finally looked, and I eventually said, okay, I believe that the original HBAs I bought are crap. Aren't working. They're used. Some of the pins were bent, and they weren't showing up. One of them showed up in my regular computer. The other one didn't at all. Part of the challenge with this as well is I'm trying to do this all with FreeNAS, which is a FreeBSD Linux distribution, basically focused on...
Oh, I've heard of that. Nice.
...doing network storage. There's other options out there, but looking at all the things I want to accomplish, like the Plex server and things like that, FreeNAS seems like a really good option. And so trying to do all that and looking at the forums and reading about, like, here's what you should do to make this all work, again, thought I was on the right track. Eventually went to Amazon and bought a new LSI controller that was actually new, certified. Cost me a little bit more, where the previous one I got on eBay for like $50. This one was about $100, but it was the full card. Like, all right, cool, this should work. Get that all set up in the system, put together, and through a lot of heartache and running around, I finally got it to recognize the enclosure I'd picked up with the drives in it for a first time. And that was great. Part of the challenge is trying to figure out how, I don't know how Linux works, and so drivers and things like that, configuring stuff, pain in my rear.
That is a lifetime of work, yep.
Well, especially because FreeNAS has a GUI, but it's not the UI of an OS. It's meant specifically for the NAS. And so all the Unix stuff I had to do through a built-in shell access through it and basically do command line. And I am not proficient at that. So went in there, played with some things, kind of got things working that way. Actually found out my big hang-up was that there was a mode on the LSI controller I had to adjust where to keep it from trying to allocate resources itself and make itself a boot drive, because I was booting off the built-in controller that the Supermicro has. Once I figured out to turn that off, the drive showed up. Next challenge is I added some of these fresh NAS drives I'd purchased that are much larger, because the ones that came with it were all 450 gig, like all of them are 450 gig, which is fine, but you put 3 of them in a RAID and you've got, you know, all of 1.5 terabyte, a little less, 1.2, 1.3 terabyte. And I'll go through that in a heartbeat. Again, I have 5 terabyte drives holding my media right now. And so I have purchased 3, so far, 6 terabyte NAS drives. And want to put those in a RAID, like RAID 1 or something like that, or actually probably RAID 5. So I at least have some parity and such, but that would still give me 12 terabytes on one drive cluster. And I'm cool with that. That would be an improvement and potentially faster. So I was like, all right, this should be what I do. Tried to put in the new drives, and for whatever reason, this enclosure could not see any of the blank new drives. And so, and through Unix, I have not been able to figure out how to format them, get them ready, do anything with them. Thankfully, FreeNAS has a great community and a lot of people willing to chat with noobs like me. And through a lot of discussion back and forth, I come to realize, after showing part numbers and the readout and screen caps of what all my stuff is showing, that the enclosures I purchased was not a JBOD, an actual dumb connection for HBAs to control multiple drives. Instead, it is an HP server works thing or something that specifically wants to control all of the way the drives are provisioned, which would be somewhat fine, except that FreeNAS wants to do all the provisioning itself and does a software kind of RAID setup. And so it's actually very flexible because it's more software enabled. You don't need a hardware RAID controller to do it for you. The problem with this is this HP device absolutely wants to do all the RAIDing for you. And because it's part of their architecture of the ServerWorks thing, it requires their own built-in software to basically access and configure.
Wait a minute. HP was not good. HP made something crap.
Well, they made
HP?
They made something proprietary. And yes, go figure. They've done that with motherboards forever. So they made something proprietary, and so that I could not actually get it to change any of the settings. And looking at trying to acquire the software you would need to access the drives and do it, it's done through a licensed bit of software that you get a serial number when you buy the equipment kind of thing. And so it's really one of these things where they're forcing you to pay for the service. And this is old outdated hardware, and go figure I got it used, and so it didn't come with any of that kind of information. I'm sure I could find some way to pay them, but because it's also an enterprise service, I'm sure that lowly old me does not want to pay whatever an enterprise service contract for even a month would cost. So I'm a little screwed. But
yeah,
again,
a little bit. You can always contact them. You never know. There might be some kindly employee.
I can, but I've already gone another step, because why not just throw money at problems? And to do the opposite of what you just advised everyone. But talking to the forum again and having people, it's basically the forum guys who helped educate me on the difference of type of connectors.
Sure.
And it's just like, this sucks. They said, nope, you have an interesting device, and it's not bad for what it does, but it's not going to do what FreeNAS wants. And so they said, what you really want is a true JBOD, which is essentially a dumb enclosure. And here is an example of what you might want to look for. And one of the guys was actually really nice and linked an eBay auction for one. And it was surprisingly not as expensive as I would have thought. It was only like $150, $160 shipped. for essentially one that will work.
Okay, that's not
supposedly.
as bad as I was expecting, actually.
Yeah, it should work how I'm projecting and want this all to end up. So I purchased that. It's in the mail, and we'll see what happens. But I will tell you, I have been trying to make progress on this now for somewhere in the range of 6+ months. As I am going from, I have never worked with enterprise, storage hardware in my life, to trying to come up blind in the whole process. And boy, has it been a process. But I'm encouraged because I'm hoping now I've done the right things and I've had people advise me some to get me on the right track, and that in the end, I will have at least a 12-bay storage device that I can fill up with multiple, hopefully 4 clusters of large drives to put in RAID, and my goal to be initially end up somewhere in the range of 40 or 50 terabytes of good storage. That's what I'm after.
That'd be sweet, dude.
Well, part of my goal is if I get to that level, it's to allow potentially others to also access and pull things off. Because also, like I said, the Super Micro computer is great. It has 4, 10 gig Ethernet connections into it.
Uh-huh.
And so you can actually connect it to multiple clusters and things like that. And I don't have 10 gig E in my house yet, but there's an awful neat opportunity there, at least between my computer and it, to maybe pick up a controller.
Have you seen those guys who are making their own ISP?
Oh, yes. And unfortunately, most of the ones I've seen, because I've looked into it, we've had some discussion about costs on ISPs and how crap it is. I've actually researched and found who sells the direct fiber connections in our area. But the challenge is for essentially what would be, I forget what the status, the speed is of it. But I think the lowest one I could get that would give me what we're looking for is somewhere in range of $1,500 a month. Well, it's
probably a little steep.
It's fiber backbone access, right? So the key there then is how many people do you have to have signed up with your service? And, oh, by the way, how do you give them service? And the best option I've seen is to do it through Wi-Fi. Set up your own basically towers and stuff like that around and use either microwave connection to different areas and then Wi-Fi direct connects to people's homes to give them good speed. And it's functional and it will work. And you can provide faster than what any of the current ISPs in my area are doing. But I figured out I would need at least 20 people signed on per month paying me but around $100 a month to cover that today, like an initial thing. And that's without build out. That's just monthly.
So outrageous, though, if you think of it that way. That can be doable. The problem is the cell tower, I think.
Well, it's not even a cell tower. Again, you do it off of microwave off your house. And you can do different, however many houses you do a repeater. It's crazy because, Ken, I've actually looked into this a lot. Because I would love to be the hub for a backbone connection and therefore be able to
That'd be really cool. That'd be a business opportunity, though. You could actually make money off that, potentially.
Potentially. And actually, I thought about that. If I could somehow because if I could get my whole neighborhood into it, because the local community I have is somewhere like 1,200 homes. And so if I could get even like a third of the homes in the community, I could probably be an ISP and make that my full-time job. But the problem with that is still, and I've seen examples where people in their garage basically have an ISP set up.
Why not, right? If you can do it, if you can actually set that up.
Well, there's other challenges because you'd also have to figure out some of the other services that ISPs provide. And so that's some of the maintenance, that's some of the installation, it's some of the security, it's some of the things dealing with laws today about what ISPs can and can't do and what they're required to manage and stuff like that. So you'd be getting in the business. It'd still be a business, but it is something that you can do. And it's actually one of the more popular things for smaller municipalities and areas that have basically ISPs that really don't care. And so as Kuro, you're saying you've considered this in Pueblo. And again, there's just, so I'd be curious to see what your options are, Kuro. But yeah, it's something I've thought about because even to some degrees, I could see doing my connection and I've seen some great direct connection to connection type of microwave technology that I could ship as long as I have line of sight to other areas, other homes, whole neighborhoods. I could probably mesh network it out big enough that, yes, you'd have latency the further away you were, but I think for most people, it would work out fine. And if I could find a way to do a lower package... I could see people moving house
to be close to that kind of connection, though.
Not in my area. You're lucky to get into a home at the right prices these days. But it's still a cool concept. So it's weird, but yeah, I've absolutely looked into those. That would be fun.
No, I think you're quite right to.
So anyhow, hopefully within the next week or two, I will have my first iteration of this network storage. I really want to get a Plex server on there, and I really want to put my photos on faster rated drives because I think that performance will improve. And I really want to pair out in some way the network connections it has to maybe 3 different connections. One that's kind of direct to my computer, and then one that feeds the house, and then one that potentially feeds the internet for anyone else that might connect, and like for the Plex server externally. Because it has 4 10 gig connections. I feel like why not split that bandwidth completely internally to it? And so we'll see.
That's mad
thoughts,
cool.
right? Wouldn't that be neat? And so yeah, that's my tech thing I'm currently trying to accomplish. All right, other geek things I've been doing. I've been costuming. So just the other day, and if people saw my Facebook stream, I think it was either that or Twitch. I think I was on Twitch. Yes, I went ham again last week on Sunday. So after the show, that I had signed up for what I'll talk later about for a LARP this week, and finally to attend. And in doing so, was trying to come up with the right costuming to support it. And I had the remnants of a coat that previous roommates and such had used in costuming, had torn apart to make lots of pouches and stuff because it had a real supple leather to it, really soft, comfortable leather. And in doing so, had basically destroyed and taken out the entire back of this coat and into the side panels, completely cut them into pieces. Actually, a lot of it was used, I think, for a chic cosplay. But then what was left of it, I tried it on initially before it was sacrificed, and then tried it on again afterwards, and I still liked the shape of it and how it fit on me. It had some cool details with a bunch of little rings that go down it. So I was like, they were going to throw it away, and I was like, nah, I'll keep that. Maybe I'll make that into something someday. And so...
you've gotten the mindset. You've begun the mindset.
Well, I've had this too long. This goes along with me being a hoarder anyways. Anyone who knows me and see my home. Oh, dude, look at my house. If I actually gave another tour of my house, I'm such a hoarder. I keep it in a respectable way so that normal living spaces don't really reflect it. But you go to my basement or my office, and it's bad. My office and my basement are bad. But I took it, and on that Sunday night, I basically just created a new coat. Thankfully, it still had the lining, so I just cut panels, and I did it in the worst possible way in that I just go with my cosplay name, particularly Ham, pinned, like kind of measured-ish, like really rough. I think a panel this big would fit in this big gap, and cut it out of the fabric, pinned it to the jacket so it was kind of covering all the little crazy, weird-shaped cuts that had come out of it, and then just sewed it. Just went up around the whole thing, and whatever was too much on the inside cut out around the seams. And I did that until basically I filled in everything that had been cut out of the back of the coat with several different fabrics to make it a little eclectic. In doing so, I unfortunately made the back a little bigger than it originally was because it was just open. So when I started reattaching the liner that was still in it, and I turned it inside out, I'm actually very proud of how this all came out. Got the liner done. At the bottom back of it, there was a gap of probably almost a foot of extra material. So I was like, I have changed the shape of this coat a bit. It is now wider at the bottom. So I had to add a dart, and I used some stretch fabric I had, into the back of the liner to make sure there was still liner, and filled in kind of that gap. So I had to do a dart being a kind of pie-shaped piece to fit in there. But I am really happy with the results of it. And I wore it to the LARP, along with essentially the remnants of the Serial Pharrell costume I did for Game of Thrones, and wore it all together, and it worked great. I did that, and I got, for the first time, really, I've done it like for a costume just randomly, or I think Ren Fair, I wore my bracers that I got from Anime Boston the first time I went 10 plus years ago, and that are Horde, my Horde bracers.
Oh, cool.
And so I wore those because they gave me 2 extra points of armor in the LARP battle for having actual armor on me. It was good. So got that done, got it built, was fun. I 3D printed some horns real quick because I'm playing a Sylvan race, which are wood elves of some sort. It's in this very specific type of LARP world, which is Alliance LARP. You can check it out at alliancelarp.com to see, and there's chapters all over the dang place, at least in the U.S. Don't know if it goes worldwide, but there's chapters all over, and there's one here in Denver. So that's who I got to go check out. And so I printed out horns so I could be Sylvan Race, grabbed some fake ears, did all that. What else did I grab? I've also been printing some pieces for friends and others, costuming pieces, and I've actually got another commission. I got 2 more commissions. I had a gentleman that I've actually done a lot of printing for, 2 helmets and all that. Asked for some more, and the Mollymock horns I did from Critical Role. I
hope you're actually making profit nowadays, sir. Because
So,
I know you like to be nice.
I am charging, and I have a formula that I will give credit is a formula that mostly Matthew had come up with from Color Me Impressed. We kind of talked through what it makes sense to put time on your machine. Currently, the formula we're using, and I mean, this is just a way to do it. Everyone do whatever you choose. If you're using your hardware to make stuff for others, our commissioning way that we came up with, I don't know if he's still doing it, but I like it. It's what I basically do, is I'm charging double the cost of material. And so when your slicing software estimates how much material it's going to take to print it out once you've gone through and kind of figured out what your model is going to do, and thankfully Cura has it built into it. If you put the material you're using cost per gram, it'll figure it out for you. So as it tells you how many grams of material it's going to use, it actually puts the cost next to it. So I double that, which makes sure I am at least covering the cost, right? And with some excess. And I charge 50 cents per hour that the print will take on a machine. And so therefore, and I say this because a lot of people are surprised with how long prints take. But, short prints for me take an hour or 2. And so that'd be like a couple extra bucks. But like the helmet prints I did, and actually probably a better idea, the horns I did, I unfortunately miscalculated when I finally did my final print design, and so I charged a little less than I should have because I had mistaken the timing on it. But that one, the horns took like 20 hours or so to print, and so that'd be $10 plus double the cost of material. And so that way, if nothing else, it is covering whatever I'm investing in doing it. Even in most cases, I've had a couple designs not work out. It's still mostly just material and stuff like my playing around, make sure I have a good product. And it's a little profit for the service so that whenever I eventually have to maintain each of the machines, I have something that I've made for it to cover that.
So, you don't feel guilty with that. Yeah. That's very smart.
So that
sounds like a good formula.
Currently what I'm doing, and it works. Like even the pieces I'm kind of playing with here, fidgeting, are the prototypes I'd done for what Hyde wore actually this weekend at COAF. In her, I forget which character is Axel from Kingdom Hearts 3, from the new one. I think it was Axel, red hair, spiky. But little models that I found for free on Thingiverse, I believe, where there were little poles and decorations for his necklace piece. So I have my prototypes that, unfortunately, certain filaments are still a pain in the butt to figure out how to make work well. So regardless of that. But yeah, so doing some printing. I've done some gifting printing for others as well that I'm still trying to figure out how to get the sizing right. Some models are better than others. They're good models, but they might, like when they're multiple pieces, they don't always fit them the right way. And so I'm not sure if you recognize what this might be. I figure a copy would.
No idea.
Especially when I add the detail piece that I need to size still, which is basically a little leaf on the front of the face. So yeah, I'm sure Copy knows what that is because because it's from the Zelda series, and essentially I believe they're called Kokorus or something. Kokorus, I believe, something like that. Little woodland sprite type creatures. As I see the yahaha. So I'm still trying. The problem is the models. The leaves are supposed to fit in a certain size on their faces. And when I got the models, they were all super tiny. I was like, nope, this is not going to fit. So I did some quick shots, and then they're off. I got to do some figuring out what the size should be for each face. And individually, each one of the leaf models is different enough that I have to size them each separately. Hopefully, I will come up with one that's like, this is the right answer, so I can print them out, save it, and just reprint them. But it's for a gift for Eleanor Moon, if people remember Hydroxycut's wife, her birthday, that was last week. And so.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, Koroks.
Cool.
And Copy says, are a pain in the butt from the game, so yes. Beyond that, the big things I want to talk about is LARP. I don't have enough time to really get into the details of what the LARP experience was, but, because I was trying to tell my cousin, and there were so many things to say. For anyone who has ever done role-playing in the sense of even D&D, it is that, but to a higher extent, because you are living the role. So, went in a minor way.
Is there any out-of-character chat?
Yes. And so the way you accomplish that, there's rules in how you try to maintain character as best you can throughout the weekend. And the way these LARPs I've seen are set up, and specific to the Alliance LARP in Denver, they run it at a Jewish summer camp location down south a ways. And in it, they have it set up where it's built into the weekend. I think the normal cost is $75 for the weekend, but it includes the base materials that they have in game, as well as, I believe, some levels of food, although food might be extra. But there are cooked meals throughout the day, as well as there's in-game food that people have. And it includes all the materials they burn during the game, things that are at the Merchant's Guild and stuff like that you can purchase and have. And the time and effort people do to both rent a land and set up all the adventures. But it also pays, like I said, your lodging for the weekend. And so it's $75 if you get one of the cabins that you share bunks in. It's not bad. Or $55 if you want to camp and bring your own tent. So again, it's actually fairly manageable. But you show up Friday night. Gaming doesn't start Friday, but it's a time for people to socialize, say, hey, and gonna get together. Gaming starts Saturday morning. And when I asked when, it's whenever you get up and want to go. Because essentially, as you get dressed up in character, you come out and you just play your character. Now, they have resources online like you would D&D, where you roll a character, have character sheets, all those things. And so you pick a class, you get your initial weapons, all those kind of things. In Alliance here, they start you at level 2. And that way you're not just walk out and smush. But it's still not a ton, because I think in my class, which is a scout, which is a hybrid fighter and rogue class, I get 11 hit points, essentially, body points as they call it, and then you separately get armor points for how much armor you have, which I didn't get explained enough well to me, because I'm pretty sure I was running around with less armor than I should have, because I thought all I had heard from the gentleman who said it, and I didn't understand it from the sheet he gave me, that maybe I had more, is he said, 2 points for those bracers. And so I believe I fought the weekend, meaning I have 2 points of armor.
Yeah, it's probably not enough. I imagine base clothing also has some value.
Well, so when I looked at the little sheet they give you for your stats for each thing, so there's proof of what you have and this and that someone has adjudicated, it said it had 6 spots on it. So I actually think I probably had 6 armor, but I played the game as though I had 2. And thus I made myself squishier than I probably needed to be.
Well, from what I've heard about LARPing, it's not fighting is really not the biggest aspect. So
it's a combination. Oh, it did. It's a combination, in that I was trying my best to do the roleplay aspect of it, right, of the live action roleplay, and it helped that my friend who introduced us, Allie, who's an actress and a friend of hers came with, is an actor. They're both stage performing actors, and so this is a wonderful improv opportunity for them. But she came, and her character's been around the LARP for quite a while. In fact, she's the reason they're at the camp that they're at. And her character is an alchemist using potions and things like that, and who has, and it's fun because when you create your character, you can come up with your own, it's a craftsman thing. It's basically a flavor text kind of thing of what your profession is. And hers is professional matchmaker. And so in game, so she's Jewish herself, and the camp's Jewish, right? She is playing a wood elf that's 8 to maybe 10,000 years old. And in her storyline, she has literally thousands of children and potentially tens of thousands of grandchildren over the years. And in doing so, it allowed her, flavor text-wise, one, to bring both her friend and myself on as grandchildren. And so we are officially part of the Schwarzenbergenstein family of elves, of wood elves. We're now Sylvan-born. And her character is, imagine, the oldest Yiddish grandmother out there. And so just every Jewish stereotype kind of thing that of her own experience in her family, essentially, what she brings to the character. And in doing so, she's quite loud, and everybody knows her. And yes, it's crazy. But fun, because she knew everybody there was walking up oh, hey! I haven't seen you forever! Come here! And she had with her, I forget what it was, mazelpan? Or mazel? Little Yiddish bread type stuff, right? Little flatbread, crackers kind of thing. And she was like, are you hungry? I've got food! And just giving it to anyone she could. And
that's sweet.
And she's in a very vibrant outfit and thing. So partly I matched my coat to somewhat match the style, but not quite the loudness of hers. Anyhow, did that, got there, spent a lot of time in the tavern because we were new, and apparently we walked into a LARP where there was a lot of big plotline story things going on, and so a lot of groups were already out on adventure, and so it took us a while before we were able to actually partake in the adventuring. So in the meantime, we talked to whoever came in. I tried to roleplay, right? They had proclamations in the tavern, those things printed up or written up about what was going on, and some of it was like, careful healers, do not go by yourself. There's been undead reported around in high quantities, and they are seeking out groups of healers to kill them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so whole flavor text is great because where I am Moshe Schwarzenbergenstein, the other gentleman who came out and played another grandchild was Mir Schwarzenbergstein. And great because, again, they came up with the backstory saying that Mir isn't the original name that Mir had, but grew up with Allie's character. Gam Gam is how everyone calls her, or Bodhi or something like that. I forget, some nickname thing, but her actual name's like, oh gosh, I need to get it right, Beatrice or something. I forget, it starts with B. But everyone calls her a nickname. But she apparently had raised him after his mother had left and taken off and stuff. And just all this flavor of like the characters anyhow. So, and I'm some long lost grandchild who my mother took off when she was 15, not to be seen, and then only wrote to tell about. And I was told whenever I was in the region I had to go see Gam Gam, and so I've just shown up for the first time, and now she's trying to introduce me to things.
Cool.
So great flavor text, even more than I've probably ever had in the past on things like that. So even that was fun. But eventually we got into adventure, and it started out where we went to a class that was about chivalry. And it was talking about, one of the gals there was talking about in real world speak, but in game, how it is good for people to communicate in crisis situations, and they using this in how you fight. And so when the battle happens, how you need someone who is vocal, who uses short single syllable, commands, things like that. And it was great hearing it all because I was thinking both the times where I've actually run into this and in the military and kind of how commands in the military are done. And I was like, this is true. Yep, this is all actually good information for anyone to use in life. And they had other classes they keep doing each time they do this of aspects of the world, the history, all these other things. They had a new adventurers thing that I went and partook of, which was fun because as that came up, and they had planned this out, right, where they had an NPC, because you have both your player characters and people who are playing NPCs, both monsters and characters in the world that you interact with that are there to help push the story, right? And so even like when we were sitting around doing the chivalry training, we had zombie attacks or whatever, undead attacks happening around in areas. Because there are people hanging out on top of the hill in their cabin, and next thing you know, a group of zombies, basically, or undead, people all in black with like rib cage things on their shirts and stuff like that and faces painted, show up, and you have people that are up at the cabin going, "Undead! Undead!" And then all like the player characters, especially the heroes that have been there a while, jump up and like run up the hill. And us being new, we're kind of like, what do we do? So we kind of lagged behind, but kind of ran up as well. And Gam Gam, Allie was like, oh no, let's go see how battle works so you can see what it is. By the time we got up there, there were so many high levels that hit the air, because I think at any time there were maybe 5 or 6 in the undead party. They were just getting destroyed. And so the undead were just, we got there and it's like, wait, is it over? Oh, crud. And then one time that happened closer, because I'd heard in the previous battle that people were trying to hit with normal weapons, just standard swords and stuff, and it was doing no damage. And then people would claim ineffective. Like, and it's funny because the way battle occurs, you have to call your damage based on your weapon. So like me just having a long and short sword, they're 2 normal damage each time you hit. And so as you're hitting, you call 2 normal, 2 normal, 2 normal, 2 normal, something like that. And others will have like 5 magic or something like that, or 5 celestial, 5 earth, or whatever type of thing it is that they're providing. And that way and there's an honor system to it, but it's about playing the character, so it's fun in that sense. I mean, all D&D has it to a bit, that you keep track of your own health and armor points. And that way, when you go down, you go down. And so I noticed that, and they were saying it was ineffective, and it sounded like, from last I heard, that only magic items would work on them. And so the next time we're in the circle, I had mentioned, it's like, oh, I don't know if I should go. My swords are normal. And last I heard it needs magic. The Baroness, Her Excellency the Baroness, who was teaching the class, turned to me and was like, you may borrow my sword. And I picked up, was like, so what do I do? And she's like, when you call your normal damage, because I'm low level, so it's still only 2 points, but say magic, or however damage, and this should affect. So I was like, sweet! Went running up the hill, and again, unfortunately, by the time I got there, it was basically over. It's like, damn it! So we got teased with fighting throughout the morning. But then, as we were doing our intro to adventuring, new person's introduction, and it was fun because we were supposed to be taught by His Majesty, like the king, or not necessarily king, but the person in charge of the region.
Sure.
He was supposed to teach us, and yet he got called off on his own quest. That we saw him as he got a kid, because a golden dragon appeared. And there was this woman dressed all in gold with like a beautiful gold headdress, like metal one on, face glittery with gold and all this stuff. And it was like, interesting. And so we got to, because I was with Gam, got to like follow along a little bit in the periphery to see what are these higher ups doing. Because it was neat to see while they were even trying to perform and help us out in their tasks, they had actual adventure things happening in their level as well. And it was all
cool.
about,
so they actually are still interested, not just there to teach everybody else.
yes,
Cool.
and so it was so neat to see all the levels, and because there were some big plotline things happening, there were things happening all around us that didn't involve us, and yet ones that we could involve in, and it was just neat to see everything that was going on, all the different layers. And so we listened to it a little bit, and it sounded like this big plot point where the golden dragon was sitting there, and like we were in the middle of the meeting, and a guy, Page or someone else, Knight, runs up and's like, Your Majesty, we need you right now. You've been requested. And it was like, what? It's like, and he's like, this isn't for everyone. Can I tell you on the side? Pulls up and says, and he's like, oh yes, I am sorry, new folks, I must go. Right? And it's like, oh snap, okay. And eventually his wife, the Baroness or such, or another one, I forget, came to teach the class because he was still off on his adventure. We saw the initial piece where they talked and they went up the hill, and a couple other higher ups followed along, and we're like, okay, that's kind of cool. And went back and we congregated, and a couple other new players showed up, and then we all had our meeting. And about halfway through, an old guy comes marching up, and hey, look, Ken's hosting us. Awesome.
Should probably have done that from like 2 years ago. Yeah.
It's a thing, whatever.
Well, I did it like 2 years ago. I thought it was always doing that, but I didn't. I don't know. I didn't realize that I had to do it each time.
I'll have to check myself again then. But old guy or someone dressed as came up and said, I need some help. Does anybody can help me move some large boxes out at the cemetery that I work, because my normal help hasn't shown up today. He's sick. It's like, I'm willing to pay a few coin. And we're like, hey, money is good. We're low level. This sounds like something we can accomplish without dying.
Yeah, but it's cemetery, right? So
right. And so on the way up, what was fun is other people in the group were like, oh, this will be whatever. And anticipating, I tried to role play. So I was talking to the old guy about like, oh, but what's been going on? Have you heard about, because there's some proclamations in the kingdom about some undead that have been running loose. Have you noticed that at your cemetery? I thought that was pertinent, right? And
yeah.
He was like, no, haven't seen anything. I don't know what's going on with that. And it's funny because you could tell as an NPC, he didn't have all the information because it was a mod he was running, basically like any module you'd have. But there's also people who run around who are kind of referees and such who are wearing all black but have a white headband on, so they are not in the world. Anyhow, so we go through his quest. Eventually it ends up where a bunch of undead and a necromancer are there. We fight, and it's for the first time. It is straight up fighting. I was fortunate because I got to utilize some swords that Allie had in her back of the car, which is funny. She was like, I'm pretty sure those are Jim's swords. Some of Jim Butcher's swords that she just still had on her. And so
that's cool.
I was like, awesome. I'll have to thank him. And they're really nice boffer swords, like the nice foam that you can hit someone pretty hard and it really won't hurt. Because the combat is not to break somebody, it's to get contact on a body part.
Sure.
At which point they take the damage. And so it's really about fast light swings. Just touch kind of thing. But we get in there, we go through the storyline, and I know I'm going to take all the time if I try to do this. So it was fun, it was good. It was interesting because us all new were trying to interact with the NPCs to see how do we draw this out. Some better than others. There's a couple new guys, at least one new guy there that was kind of awkward, didn't really know what to do or say. It was kind of in the way more than helpful. Another couple who were really in it and really having fun with it and had gone on an earlier adventure with high-ups because they were part of a family. And it was their first time, and they're like, that stuff was crazy. They took us into a building that was completely blacked out, and it was a tomb that they'd gone into. They had sheets over the windows and stuff like that, so when they walked in, it was like pitch black, and monsters kept coming out of them in the dark, and they said it was nuts. And they were new, but there was some really high ups. Such a neat immersive experience. So we go through our adventure, come back, and just in time to like go on to this big town fight. That's part of the big storyline where the small adventure was for us noobs, and we actually ended up with some great coin from it, where unfortunately everybody except us died, including the old guy. And it was fun because one of our guys was hit with wither, and so he was down on his knees and couldn't really move. And then the necromancer, after most of the undead were hit, took command of the old guy and had him walk himself into the blades of our withered guy.
Oh, cool.
And so impale himself on that. We're like, he killed the cemetery guy. Oh, that's messed up. And the necromancer was actually his employer or employee that had called in sick, was actually doing dark arts in the cemetery in this blocked off place that he didn't know. It's a great story, right? Good stuff. Go to this big battle, and the big battle was a bunch of hobgoblins up at this imaginary waterfall and water area that was corrupted. And so if you stepped in it, you instantly took 15 points of howling rage damage. So us low levels who all had like at most 12 points of body are like, no. So we had to mark where the water line was, and we had to stay out of it. Where all the hobgoblins who were corrupted are in it, and going like, come on, right? And we're just like, nope. But it was a melee of probably, 12, 13 of us versus like 8, 10 of them. And there were healers and magic casters and, melee. We had a couple shield guys and stuff like that. It was just this whole crazy thing. And so we go in a fight, and we kind of tried to strategize a little bit. And it's funny because the people who been there a lot who have really nice costume stuff are like, wow, this is way more strategy than we ever use. But some of us who, I don't know, military mind stuff are like, hey, this sounds like a fun idea. So start going around. Neat. And it's crazy. So I had most of the time I was sitting with like a shield in front of me. And these guys, unfortunately, when they were hitting, it was essentially anywhere from 3 to 5 damage a hit. And it was howling rage. And me running around with 11 points of body and what I thought was 2 points of armor. So 13 hit points, essentially. That's like 3-4 hits and I'm out kind of thing, right? And so I have the two swords. What I found was cool is I was really good, yay martial arts, at parrying blows. There were so many blows that came in that I could just deflect with one sword and try to tag with the other. And so
nice.
The challenge being that I don't know how many hit points the hobgoblins had, but I was doing like 2 normal, back, right? Come up, 2 normal, back. And I think I was just dinging their armor for the most part. I have no idea what their stats were. But the guys next to me that were higher up were like, 5 this, 5 that. So 2 of their hits are like 5 of mine. And just so it was interesting kind of that back and forth. Since it was a whole grouping of the people there. And we had casters who have like the classic bean bags that you're throwing from a distance. And you can dodge them. So if someone throw a magic spell on us, you just move. But I did learn the hard way that if you deflect one with a weapon, you still get hit. Like the spell hits and arcs through your weapon. So I was like, darn it. And some spells can or can't go through shields. So the shield guys aren't necessarily overpowered. It was just fun. And wow, is that active. Like running around, bouncing around. It
sounds, even at the start when you're saying like, oh, there's zombies up the hill. Everybody now needs to run up this hill.
Yes,
like, Jesus,
yes. And you're in full gear and it's outside. It was almost 80 degrees out yesterday. Granted, it was in the hills a little bit. So some shade and some breeze. So that was nice. But it was a lot of work. And I say this because the challenge also, go through that. All that, good times. So when you talked about, just to answer questions real quick, because, geez, I knew this was going to happen. If you want to talk out of character, rule discussions, things like that, you just put a hand or a weapon on your head, and that means you're out of game for that moment. Thus, to not break character, to answer questions stuff. Also, when you see others with their swords or something up, that happens a lot with your NPCs is they're staging. The NPCs will all have a gathering place where they change into whatever they're doing. They get told what they're going to be doing next. And then they come out all with like something on their head, like swords on their head or something like that as they march out. So you as a character, ignore them. And just continue what you're doing because okay, they're going to go do something. And you may or may not be involved. So, all right, go do your thing. And so that's a way to really quick be like, oh, and you stop and be like, quick question. This, and this. Clarification on how this works. And they're like, oh. And you're like, all right, got it. Take it off and you continue. Right? So it's neat how that works, and it's a universal sign for everyone, which is really cool. Other than that, on the way home, I was already in costume, so I stopped really quick at the Colorado Anime Fest weekend gathering that a lot of people I know are at. That I was kind of like, do I, don't I? I didn't get ticket, I just walked around and socialized. It was neat to see people. It kind of got me a little bit into the idea of, this what costuming I need to do and getting me ready for Anime North next month and things like that. And finally, I was going to comment and just say that unfortunately I did all of those things all day, and all I had was some eggs for breakfast and some jerky at lunch and water. And so the fact that I've gotten back into keto because I was not happy with the number I saw and did the whole day like that, yet was active and fine until like honestly midnight at COAF and saying I should probably leave at some point. I hadn't eaten anything else, and when I got home and then like this morning weighed myself, I had lost what did I figure out 5 pounds, 6 pounds almost, but just over 5 pounds yesterday.
That's probably largely water weight, but
a lot of it probably was. But I was drinking a lot of
water.
water, and it's still part of that initial keto thing. So it's not that I didn't drink water; I just didn't have much food with me, and so admittedly by the end of the night, I was a little like, I should. Like this morning, I was looking forward to where I made breakfast and got some stuff like this will make me feel better. All that. All right.
Yes.
That's it. That's my Geek Cred. And I know you put stuff in there, so please, in the last like couple minutes we have there, throw it in there.
Hey, the number of times I've stolen most of the show, I think it's only fair that you do for once. So I played a little bit of League. As you know, I played a little bit an ARAM or two with you, so we did that. I've managed to get myself up from Bronze 4 at the start of the year to Bronze 1 now, and you go up one by one, so I have slowly been getting myself up there. My goal is to get to Silver 5. I had my series last week to get up to Silver 5, and of course, I was on a winning streak of like 6 games, and then as soon as I started my series, lost 3. Of course, as it happens. I had a fun idea for a bit of work that is also fun. I was thinking about, I won't go into technical details, but basically, I've mentioned before that a lot of my work is based on this artificial evolution. Like you take the idea of evolution, you put it into code, and you make stuff evolve, whatever stuff may be. It could be code itself. It could be a schedule for employees. It could be a train schedule, whatever it may be. And I was thinking, Factorio, a lot of Factorio is about efficiencies and maximizing outputs.
Interesting.
And, I was thinking, I wonder if there'd be a way to... Maybe I got in touch with the dev team or something, had access to some of the source code. It'd be cool if they let me... Or even if I did it through the blueprint system.
Are you thinking a way to like code efficiencies into the game? Or like have an AI figure out the most efficient way to deal with certain situations?
Yeah, like there's certain things like, okay, so you have like the idea of a splitter, right? So you have like, say you have 2 belts full of stuff, right? Full of items, say coal or something, and they go into a splitter, and you want them to go out in 3 different locations, right? So you can split them and send them off. Now the thing is, when a belt turns, there's spaces that appear in between, and if you take things off a belt or onto a belt, little minor spaces can appear. So you occasionally what you want to do is put it through like a special filter, which will push them all to the most efficient spacing as well.
Okay.
So if you can have a way of having a splitter that would filter these items into a nice order, as well as splitting the number of them on each belt to the number you want. Like say you're trying to do 1 belt into 3 evenly, but also evenly spaced. That's a really difficult thing for a human mind to get right. However, if you throw something like a genetic algorithm or something at it and say, "Hey, this is the ideal output. Try a million different solutions. What is the best way to do it?" And it could probably come up with something. And I think the coolest thing would be if it could spit out blueprints. Try it in the game. That would be its way of analyzing the fitness of the solution, how good the solution is. It would judge it and then retry it itself again. So it'd be completely automated. So you tell it to run, you come back, an hour later and see what it's done, and it will have produced either something horrible or something amazing. And ideally, what you would have it do is run on the actual game in total eventually. So once it has these little mini things, you can have them run in conjunction and have a heuristic which would run each individual one at the right time. That would be called the hyper heuristic, I guess. So you would choose each one and when to use each one and where to use it and so on, and producing powerful things. You have to cheat to make sure that it's not running the player a human, but maybe turn on some sort of god mode so that things just appear when you place them or whatever.
Well,
at first.
So what's interesting about that, I would actually, so I see that as a piece, right, of the overall optimization that you could perform. Mm-hmm. Because I would almost go or want to go that step further and do like a optimization of here is the problem set, meaning like here are the resources I have. And I would break it out into individual problems where my goal is to properly pull all the resources from this area of coal, right, as an example, just some resource piece, and let an AI, based on the implementation of the constraints of what you have as mechanisms to harvest it, do an optimization routine. Like, you could provide certain inputs saying you will be receiving all the power you need. Okay.
Well, the thing is, the resources are so sparse in Factorio that, generally speaking, if you come across a patch of iron, you'll want to use it all anyway.
Oh,
there's no question about.
But no, you start going into the constraints of the efficiency is, okay, you can have resources are not, or the things I need to create whatever my harvesting is unlimited. Therefore, what would you do? But then you can attach it with, okay, my resources are limited to this. Now, how would I optimize it?
What kind of blueprints would you produce that only use a certain amount over time or whatever?
Yes, and that way, and because when you do that, and if you space that out for each individual type of material and location thing you're doing, I think eventually you could modularize them into a singular thing as they are now interacting and feeding each other, so that they contain those constraints for each other thing you're doing, and thus, in the long run, create an AI that could analyze any map and starting location and build a general level of how would you produce.
Yeah.
And then separately, you could then start adding into that constraints of, like, the enemy, right? That you have run into this type of enemy, and thus how would you respond? I mean, this is how you build AI, right? So I think it would be really interesting, because what you could do with that, it's almost like those people who have done the most optimal SimCity type cities, right, that are self-sustaining and maximum population, that if you could have an AI come up with like a goal, right, of launching off the planet or something like that in the most efficient way possible, and just see what it comes up with, because I think it would almost be entertaining in today's market. Not only do you do that and prove that you have an efficiency thing and a way for machine learning to kind of figure things out, but to then put it all on Twitch and stream the idea of what the AI is doing and describe what it's trying to accomplish. And thus funding the whole thing.
The finished product, though, right? You wouldn't want to stream the actual trying to work out what the AI, how to make the AI. And
but
whatever.
you could stream pieces of, like, I have only coded this piece.
Yeah,
and watch how it's working, right? And you do that for each module, and then the whole culmination of it would be, and here's it answering the entire problem set. Look how awesome I am. Yeah. Sorry, that just, like, comes off my head as, like, that would be really interesting and way beyond my capability.
Not only would it be cool to do, but I think that would actually be a kind of research, a case study if nothing else, and I think you'd probably get a paper out of that.
Well, because
I actually had to look around and see what papers have actually been published using Factorio. There's only one published material out there, and it's a master's thesis from a guy in, where was it? Was it Latvia, Poland? I can't remember. Where he basically he worked in the development team, and he was talking about routing algorithms for the biter AI. If you have 10 different biters who need to run to an enemy base, how do they get there without running over each other? How do they get there without running over certain things, whatever else? And it's quite interesting. So that was something I was thinking about. It could be a fun, maybe if I'm ever struggling for research ideas, it could be a fun side thing to do. I watched the film The Silence today. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. I'm quite enjoying it. It's a Netflix film that came out this year. It's kind of a horror post-apocalyptic film. It's got the actress from Sabrina as the main. Is the lead.
Interesting. Okay.
And I'm actually quite enjoying it. I think it's pretty good. It's a little poorly done at some points. Like, you think, like, oh, that's a bit generic, or the acting was a bit poor there. But overall, I am quite enjoying it. I would recommend it. I watched Ready Player One this week as well.
Hey, okay, I'm very curious what you think.
I enjoyed it. I didn't like the fact that it was forced into this, it must have a romance. If it doesn't have a romance, then it's not a film that can be... I hate that.
Well,
crap.
And I forget, have you read the book?
No.
Or listened to the audiobook? Okay, interesting. No. Because I will admit, there is a romance that occurs in the story in the book. I just think it's handled far better in the book.
That's not surprising.
But I have so many complaints about what they did in
Well, I enjoyed
the
a lot
movie.
of it. I liked a lot of the references. Some of them were pretty niche that I got, and I thought to myself, man, I must only be getting like 1% of them.
Well, and admittedly,
there's a lot of really neat references.
They made the movie to do the call-outs for people of your generation.
Yeah.
And my challenge, God, I know I've ranted about this before, is that they took away, in my opinion, the soul of the story that was in the book. because they drummed everything down to a quick visual, shiny, it's neat to look at. And the book itself has a lot of character to it because it actually presents the Gunters as not being just, I don't know what you'd even call it and how they're depicted in the movie. In the book, they are problem solvers. They are geeks and they are historians, and they absolutely immerse themselves in the 80s and early 90s culture, basically where I grew up in my formative years. And so the stuff that's referenced is primarily there because it's all based on Halliday, and when he sets the Easter egg, Halliday actually puts it based on his experiences in life, not what's current in the world, and he grew up in the 80s. And so when it's like you have to figure out where Halliday hid this thing somewhere in the universe, it's all based on his favorite things in the world because he wanted to find someone who could take over the oasis that was like him and understood him. And instead they derived it down to cheap game interactions versus an actual Easter egg hunt, where the difference in the book is you had an Easter egg hunt to find the eggs, and then when you found them, you got a key that then you had to go another step and find the gate to then use the key in. And at each stage of that, they would have differences in both, one, having to figure out what it is you had to do in the first place, so all the research piece of it, the egg hunting, and then separately being able to perform the necessary task to get past the gate or to earn that key and stuff like that. And so there was so much more. You got to learn how skilled the players were in it and why they were able to accomplish everything they did. It's just, again, the movie took out the heart and soul of it, but it's shiny. And so and it does follow the overall what happened, just without any of the love I had for it. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay, fair enough. Well, yeah, I think most of it was just basically, hey, look, a pretty thing that references a lot of things that you find interesting, and it touched on a lot of the stuff that I enjoy, and I wouldn't rate it poorly. I'd say I enjoyed it. I just do feel I even though I haven't read the book, I did feel like it was kind of lacking a bit of soul. I feel like it was just a movie of cool references. It didn't really have much substance in itself. Yeah. But I did thoroughly enjoy the Stephen King scene as well. I thought that was really well done. There's a few points like that. I think that was great.
It had some fun visualizations. I give it that. It's just I do challenge because the people I know who watched the movie first and then have read or experienced the book have enjoyed them both. The people who read the book first and found they really loved it mostly are very critical of the movie because it's another one of those, my biggest complaints of any movie is missed opportunities and generally feeling as though your audience is not smart enough, quick enough, witty enough to get what it is you're trying to explain that the book does.
It kind of makes sense though because the book isn't supposed to be a blockbuster seller. It's supposed to be a niche thing to a specific audience.
But it did very well.
Oh, I can't comment. But but the movie is supposed to resonate with a lot of number of crowds, right? Of different ages, different generations, different experiences with games.
I would disagree in some way because I feel like the movie was a bait and switch for my generation, but was targeted at yours. Because those in my generation who went are like, okay, it's just some summer movie. But if you read the book, you went in with like a
homage to the older generation because it says, it says a lot of Halliday's actual favorite games were all these older games.
Yeah, but again, because it doesn't touch really the music, it doesn't really touch the era and a lot of the research materials because there's so many times in the book that it says Halliday was huge into this. And so the Gunters talk about having to relearn this, right? Because they're so late in life in this compared to when Halliday was that, because Halliday's late in age, sick, and dies. So this is something like for them 30, 50 years removed. Yeah. And so completely different than what they know. And so it's fun because it's them relearning what it was like to grow up in the 80s and 90s. And because Gunters are so into it, they actually find that it's like they're reliving that time frame.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that soul is definitely missing from the movie. I didn't feel that at all.
And that's the key, and that's why I throw it there, and I'm happy.
It's like they already know all, and they're just like relearning specific parts.
Oh god, that's one of the cheesiest parts because the fact that they had the Halliday reference library in the movie was complete garbage. What they took away from it is every Gunter had their own set of collections of like notes and files they'd made where they would copy links and like archives of information of movies they've watched, songs they listened to, and connections they made based on stuff Halliday had said or reported on or any interviews he'd had. And in doing so had like really captured a lot of it. And so it was all their individual path to discovery of who Halliday was and how they were fiercely guarding the secrets they had learned because everybody wanted to be the first. And yet they would all be in circles because they were all against IOI. And so it's such a great revisiting of like the underground, almost like hacker community, but more from the gamer perspective and people who, like being the opposite of what you would consider hipster today, right?
Sure.
It's more the, I absolutely get this thing and I'm in it, right? We are an 80s cultural revival group or something like that. That, yeah, like I said, I can go on because I do have a lot of love for that book. Oy. And yes, guys, you're getting bonus time right now as we're continuing talking because it's like, so much to say.
Yes, speaking of, I'll leave my last two things for next week.
Okay, okay. Well,
shall I do the spiel?
Well, real quick, I want to at least get some last things out there. One, regardless of how you might feel about it, just an opportunity if you do want it, is that there is an opportunity from Epic Games, from the Epic Store, to acquire Assassin's Creed Unity right now in response to Notre Dame catching fire.
I thought it was from Unity.
It's... Well, Unity might... No. It's
whatever their crappy Ubisoft...
It's Epic... is it Ubi? Was it Ubi?
Yeah, I thought it was Ubisoft's
Epic?
crappy launcher.
It might be Ubi. Is it Uplay?
Yeah. That's
okay, so sorry, Ubisoft's one. Uplay. My bad. I always hear.
Well, makes sense, right? Where else would it be?
Well, I hear the negative of which launcher people are hating. That's why that went through my head. But yeah, sorry.
There's just so many launchers that are hating now.
Right. Uplay, so you can still get it. They were doing it for like a week, and unfortunately, when Notre Dame burned, it was that long, and so there. One of the nice things about it, at least, it showed that from a tech perspective, they have captured the imagery throughout of Notre Dame. So while the actual art pieces or some things may be lost, the ability to visualize it in some way does exist and will continue on virtually. So regardless of what they do to fix it, it's got wherever it last staged exists somewhere digitally right now, which is kind of cool. And separately, I had two things I was going to throw in there, and this is the Epic side, I guess. The Unreal 4 engine, I had found just through random stuff 2 YouTube videos that I would love for people to check out if they're so interested. But they are games, because it's kind of like the modding thing, but not fully. What it is renditions of classic games in the Unreal 4 engine. And
I love seeing this. Yes.
Yes, and so cool. The 2 that I highlight, because honestly these are 2 I found so far, and I haven't looked for a bunch, are Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. That absolutely makes sense. And Tomb Raider 2. Of all things. And so in the YouTube links I've provided in the chat, they are kind of discussions and comparisons between the 2 efforts. And so you can actually go back and see what these people have created. And the nice thing is they are free to download. And so if you've got the horsepower on your computer to do it, give it a shot, check it out. You might be able to get some nostalgia, but in a very shiny, pretty new way. Like the Zelda one's lighting effects are so good. And honestly, the Tomb Raider one looks like not quite the most modern Tomb Raider game, but a pretty modern one. And when you see the side-by-sides of the old one, you're like, how is this the same game? But they've done a pretty darn tootin' good job of recreating those experiences. So, throwing that out for if people are interested. All right, with that, we've gone over. It is probably time. Ken, feel free to give everybody the spiel.
You have been listening to Show X on Twitch, YouTube, Alpha Geek Radio, your favorite podcast service. Thank you for listening or watching us. We do appreciate it. You can check us out all over the place, and you can help us out by doing various things. The places you can find us include Twitter, where you can find us at twitter.com/.ed, twitter.com/GoX, and twitter.com/VtWShowX for Wayne, for myself, and for the show. You can find us on Facebook. Go facebook.com and search for Show X. Nice and easy. That's where we post all of our memes. Twitter is for our personal Twitters, and we also have the show one for more official stuff there. Check us out on reddit.com/r/ShowX. Be sure to subscribe to our subreddit. Upvote the things you see. It's our best way to, I think, cross-pollinate and bring in new listeners, or one of the best ways is via Reddit. So if you have been listening to the show and you want to comment or you want to tell us any of your interesting stuff we said at the start, talking about immortality and our philosophical discussions there, do it on our subreddit. That's the best place for it. Please do, and then invite your friends to join the chat as well. You can support us on patreon.com/showx. We can take a minimum of $1 per month. That's $12 a year. That's approximately £9. So that's what's that on average? Wait, let me actually work this out. Average income month. Okay, the average income per month in let's go with the UK is that's yearly, is $40,000 US. So divided by 12 is 3,000, and then divide that by 31. And then divide that by... so you'd be giving, basically, if you were working about, an hour, maybe 2 hours of your monthly salary by working an hour or 2 hours, that's how much you'd give as a minimum for $1 a month a year. So we do 2 hours a week. If you give 1 or 2 hours of your time in terms of that, we would very much appreciate it. That's patreon.com/showx. That keeps our software and our hardware all going. And I think I'm probably going to need to buy new headphones, considering these things keep falling out my ear.
That's frustrating.
It is. You can also check us out by sending in emails to showx@VtWShowX.com. That's also appreciated. With that, thank you for having me on the show, sir.
Absolutely, Ken. Thank you very much for joining. We appreciate all of you out there for listening in, watching, as such. For however you connect with us each week, we are hopefully here to entertain you. And so with that, we're out of here this week. We'll catch you again next. And I believe after the show, I'm not sure who all might, but we will be jumping into the Discord. If you have any questions about getting there, please just put them into the Twitch chat and we'll get you there. And you can interact with us, maybe play some games after the show. But with that, you've been listening to ShowX on VtWProductions.com. And we are out of here. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. See you next zombie. Gonna